Okay, as you can see, we're in Boston. Here's the Boston Harbor. Here's the end of the Charles River. Beacon Hill is down here. And you've got the Boston Common and the public gardens. And then in the middle of all this, you've got Government Center. This is the old West End. This is the North End. And so this is Government Center. Boston City Hall is there. And there's a bunch of other buildings. And what I'm going to do is, what's cool is you can have this map that's like an overlay. You can see some of the streets are the same, especially on the top right, but some of them have changed. This is 1928, it's almost 100 years ago. So this shows the Boston of 1928. And if we zoom in right here, we find Hub Cycle and Hub Supply Company Incorporated, 1923, 29, and 37 Portland Street. So Portland Street, in fact, here it is, Portland Street, runs this way to, I think this is Merrimack, yeah, Merrimack Street, and then it goes into the North End. That part of Portland Street, as you can probably tell, is all gone, right? You can see it up and to the left. It's all gone. So that's where Hub Cycle was, and the question that I wanted to try to answer is, where exactly is that in today's Boston? In other words, if when they destroyed that building there were still some bike parts, what building would they be under in an archaeological excavation? So all I have to do is get rid of this, and you can very clearly see that Hub Cycle rectangle is within this rectangle. So what is that? Well, that is the John F. Kennedy Federal Building. And so what happened was all of this was demolished. This was after the old West End. So here's the West End. In 1928, there was a West End, a complicated neighborhood of immigrants. That all got torn down in the 50s. Then they moved southeast, and they started working on tearing down the edge of the West End and where Scully Square was. So this Portland Street address is actually sort of in between the West End on the top left and Scully Square on the bottom right, and all of that got replaced with City Hall Plaza and government buildings. And so if we want to see what it looks like, we can first go, let's say, here, and we can see, wrong side of the street, that this is a massive building on the sort of western end of it, and then there's a low part over here. And if I go back here, remember it was that square? So if I go to the plaza itself, oops, yep, that's it. So if I go to the plaza itself, I can see this is right at the end of it. So this is pretty much exactly where Hub Cycle was. Under this building, under the foundation of this building, is where the foundation of that Hub Cycle building was for something like 35 years, roughly. That my great-grandfather, JB, spent his time at that location, as did my grandfather, before it moved to Kenmore Square. So the other thing you can do here, which is a lot of fun, is to change the date of the map that you're looking at. So if we go back to 1922, you'll notice it's owned by a person named Joseph Waldman with an O. But Hub Cycle was there at the time, so they must have been renting and had not purchased a building in 1922. So that's interesting information. We can go a little further back to 1917. You'll notice that and you'll see a picture at the end of this video of the actual building, but 19, Portland was not part of it. It was some other woman named Anna E. Tower that owned it, and Susan Sherry owned the building next to her. And Charles Merrill owned this building in 1917, and Hub Cycle was at this location at that time. And then if we go a little further back, let's say, 1882, you'll get even more interesting stuff. It's still two different buildings. Here's 19, it says secondhand goods. And then 27 through 37 is a confectionery, manufacturing, popcorn manufacturing, heat furnaces, sash doors, showcase, and sash doors. I'm not sure what that says exactly. And then we can probably go a little further back and see what happens. 1874. Oops, that one didn't work. Here we go, 1874. And it's a little harder to read, but it just shows who owned those buildings, and will also show everything else if you're curious about all this stuff. And I'll try one more. I probably shouldn't, but let's see, 1867. Whoa. Okay. Oh yeah. So 1867. Here's Portland Street. Here it is at 21. Notice this. 19 wasn't even a building at the time. It looks like it was just a driveway in here, and it has a pickle factory, and then furniture. It looks like. So very interesting stuff you can learn from these maps.